So we don't need to be meditating to experience mindfulness. Sometimes it's easier because there's less distractions, there's less things that get in the way of presence. However, sometimes not being in formal meditation, somewhere quiet and kind of contrived, right? It's not very natural. I mean, this isn't how we are in our day-to-day, but actually being in motion or being amidst a moment of just day-to-day activity can actually be really interesting as an anchor to pull us in, right? We bring our attention to the felt sensation of that walk that we're going through and the breeze on our skin and the sounds of the birds, or maybe it's mundane. Maybe it's taking a shower and we wake up and we've done that mechanical, habitual routine that we do in the shower. And all of a sudden we notice the scent of the shampoo or the feeling of water flowing against the skin, temperature. And we have these opportunities for awakening in any point of the day. We don't need special conditions for that. And these moments of awakening, as we start enjoying them and allowing ourselves to really drop in and experience them, they start to spontaneously happen more frequently without the need to train or to try. There's just this innate want to be back to belonging to our own lives, be a part of our own experiences, be in direct contact with what's happening. That's what our organism yearns for. And sometimes that becomes very difficult when the pacing is quick, right? Our organism operates at a very different speed than our modern day life. And so most of the time, the organism is just defended and freaked out about everything that's coming. And it's trying to keep track of everything, and it's feeling overwhelmed. And at some point, it just, something else has to take over, because otherwise we would be acutely aware of how uncomfortable our modern lifestyle is. And that wouldn't really be helpful for getting through the day. So a strategy comes up to defend ourselves so that we can just get through the day. It actually removes us. We become disassociated. So it's a protective mechanism that comes into place. It's not a problem. Being disconnected, being unaware is not a problem unless you want to be aware. Unless you make it a problem. Unless you identify with the story of, it's my fault that I'm unaware. Or this says something about my ability as a meditator. And really, it's just the conditions that we're in, and the body is responding accordingly to the conditions it's in. When we do become conscious and we come back and we notice that there is a yearning towards presence or having more connection, that's where we're in a position of having choice. And that's where we do have responsibility, because there's consciousness. And if the wanting or the yearning is to have more connection, then we need to recognize that the current conditions that are generating disconnection are what get in the way. And so our responsibility is to remove those current conditions, to create the conditions that are more conducive to presence. And that might be slowing something down. I guarantee that anything you choose to do, if you intentionally slow it down, you will automatically be present. Automatically. Because the system can absorb that. I mean, unless you're coming with a full momentum of a lot of dysregulation. But just, I mean, you can try it, just even like lifting your arm up really, really slowly. I can feel the muscles, the tension of the strings of the muscles changing in my upper arm, elbow area, wrist, so it's just really a matter of aligning how we are going about our day to the pacing that the nervous system can absorb, digest, take in. I mean, the solution to anything, if we're feeling overwhelmed, is just slow down. You don't need to know what to do about it. Just stop, slow down, create some space, disengage from what's happening for a second, and just wait. We actually don't have to do anything. You just wait. And if you wait long enough, your system will prompt you to what the next step is. But the thing is, we're unable to wait because we're freaked out. And so we want to do something to make this go away because this is really uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. So I'm going to start trying to do all these other things. And that's going to activate the system more. And I'm not going to have awareness, full awareness of what's called for in that moment because my system can't absorb all of it because it's just trying to contend with everything that's coming at it. And so I'm just going to make poor decisions that are going to lead to poor actions that are going to exacerbate the situation, maybe abate it for a moment where I think, oh, okay, that worked. Let's do more of that. But we're not able to get out. So it's actually a really simple solution. Just stop. Whatever you're doing, stop. Wait. Even if it's intolerable, wait. So that you can see the evidence that your system knows. Let it complete its process. Let it come up with the most appropriate response before you jump in and take over. Let it show you that it's capable, that it's reliable, that it's trustworthy before you judge that it's not. This is how we build self-trust. We give the self an opportunity to show that it can handle it. And it will. Probably not the way you thought it would. Because of course you're the expert and you know everything, right? But the felt sense that you will get from its solution, if you follow that solution, is going to be very different than if you followed your survival strategy on a deep, deep level. And what's great is it's usually surprising. It's not something that we could have considered before, because of course we didn't have access to all that information. So it's something completely wildly different. We're like, oh, wow. Why didn't I think of that before? Like, because that's not something that can be thought of. That's insight. It comes up when the information has been absorbed, digested, and integrated. The system will give a response. So I wanted to touch a little bit on the subject between the difference in understanding and knowing, because I think it ties a little bit into what I'm talking about right now, where there's an aspect of ourselves, I'll call it mind for lack of a better word, that feels like it needs to be on top of things, and it needs to make the decisions and understand what's happening in order to make good decisions. And so it's the constantly trying to interpret what's going on so that it can understand, so that it can make the right decision. And then there's knowing, which is not involving this mind aspect of ourselves, where there is just the absorbing of information and being interested and waiting, and then knowing what the next moment is or what is needed. I'll use the analogy of sailing. So a few years ago, I became very interested in sailing, and I took classes so I could understand how to sail, to understand the physics of the wind going over the sail and what angle the sail had to be with respect to the direction of the wind, to understand the physics of how the boat moved. Right. And then I would practice. I would get on the boat on land and practice like adjusting the sail and trying different things. And then, of course, I would go out onto the water and really the trying to apply the theory of what I understood while there was the wind and there was the swell and the currents and, all these different factors actually got in the way of me being able to respond in the most appropriate way to that given situation. Like the understanding kind of helped like afterwards, but really the part that allowed me to learn and to know was the attuning with my body, feeling your way into knowing what to do. And that is by just paying attention to what's happening and trying things by trial and error. Maybe I let the sail go down a little bit and I see, oh, there's more tension, so I'm being pulled forward. Okay, so that's what I need to do. I'm losing the tension. Okay, so let me pull it back so I can maintain that tension. It's a felt, directed action that does have cognitive going on along the way with it. So I'm not excluding the thinking. The thinking is there to notice and to see cause and effect. But it's the body that's also engaged in feeling, that's participating in that knowing, as well as the emotions that come. Right? There's the excitement that comes when I get it right, or the disappointment when I'm off track, or the fear when I've gone a little too far and I'm about to tip over. Right? There's a lot going on. It's not one channel that I'm using to figure out how to sail. It's all of the channels are on board to contend with that given situation. And, I can prepare ahead of time. I can read the charts. I can get the weather report. I can do all of these things to give me a better sense of how to contend with given situations. But really attuning moment to moment when I'm actually sailing is going to give me the most accurate information and the most efficient way to contend with what's going on. So there's different facets of how we can approach how to navigate new situations. We can read books, we can go to lectures, we can conceptualize something, but that's never going to have enough to carry us through than the actual just attuning. Right? Think about how children learn how to do things before we put them into school. What are they doing? They're attuning with their body and emotions to everything that's happening. And they're running small little experiments. They try it over and over and over, and they watch what happens after they try that, and they get closer. It's a different way of understanding, if you will. And it's actually more effective because it translates to any situation. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. The process is the same. It's attuning. Whereas understanding requires me to intellectually understand all these different possible variations of what can happen. And not to mention, there's no way I'm going to be prepared for every single possibility. And having a fixed idea coming into a situation, a novel situation of how it should go or might go, prevents me from seeing the other ways that things can go, because I'm not even trying those ways. I'm already coming in with a fixed idea. And so what I'm proposing here through mindfulness is that just cultivating your awareness, your full awareness, this somatic, emotional, and cognitive capacity that you have, versus isolating one aspect only, which is cognition. But if we're able to bring all of us online, we're actually more efficient. And we spend less energy, and we're more connected to the process itself. There's less effort because we have more resources, we have more capacity. The other aspect is this is what generates self-trust, right? I can go into a novel situation, I can go into uncertainty without understanding all the parameters and just attune. And this capacity for attunement, which is bringing all of my sensory capacity online, as well as my cognition to be able to track and witness what's happening, as well as the emotional that will give me other kinds of feedback. It's enough. That's safety. Safety is having this capacity. It's not understanding. It's not studying things and preparing and having everything in place. I mean, that's helpful too. We don't want to forfeit that, but I'm just saying there is something else that is available that's far more powerful than what we're using. And the invitation here is to try it and taste it and experiment with small stake uncertainties, to watch the process, to get the evidence that this mechanism works. Because there's no way we're going to let go of the process we've been using until now, until we can trust that there's something else that's better. Why would I let go of my conditioning? I mean, sure, it's like kind of not necessarily leading me to the freedom and the presence that I want, but hey, you know, it's keeping me safe. We're coping here. We're good. You know, so why am I going to let go of that unless I have evidence that there's something else that can actually ensure that we're going to be okay? And that's going to be better than what I'm already doing. So that's what we're contending with. And that's why it's hard to let go of conditioning. And for a good reason, right? So we respect that. We understand it from this lens, from this view. We see that there's not a problem with being in the conditioning. It's there for a reason. If we want to move out of conditioning, it's not about shaming it or punishing it when it comes into being. It's about trying something different, exposing ourselves to different possibilities and letting the conditioning see that that possibility might work. Right? So I don't want to completely discard that, one, we have to figure everything out on our own or navigate this alone. You know, we are inherently interdependent. And I also don't want to invalidate previous experiences that is captured in books or lectures. What I'm saying is that that's one aspect of our capacity. And we also have these other aspects that we don't use so much. And when all of those are in place, actually, there's a state that emerges. And that state is of deep attunement. of really making contact with what's happening. And in that state, the nervous system receives a lot of information to contend with that situation, which might not have been available if I were not using those aspects of awareness, or if I was fixated on things being a particular way.